Alright, this video is about Ultra Kaiju Monster Rancher. Again, I know, but I'm riding its hype until it subsides. Plus, I genuinely like the game. With the recent release of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet though, it now has big competition in the monster taming genre. I've already created a review for the game. If you haven't watched it, please do. In that video, I said Kaiju Rancher is a good game. Fantastic combat, addictive monster racing loop, boring adventure mode, but I also said there's a major hindrance in progression, and I cited the fusion system as the main factor. As it goes, you race a monster for 6 to 8 hours, after which they inevitably retire. Their stats are now set in stone and they become pretty much unusable. You can, of course, register it in versus mode to fight other players' Kaiju, but really, you only have 2 true final uses for it. You can either sell it to the organization for an insultingly low amount of gold based on its strength, or for one last hurrah, you can use it as fusion material. So let's talk about fusion. But this is not a guide. Instead, I'm going to explain why I think this is a bad mechanic that's holding the series back and how it can be improved. The YouTube channel of Mr. Moosebones already has a tutorial for how fusion works and how you can use it to create powerful kaiju, so that's covered. I recommend checking it out if you're interested. But to make sense of what I'm about to say, I still do have to mention how it works, so here's a brief rundown. To initiate fusion, you need 2 kaiju. The stronger the kaiju you use, the stronger the result will be, but you get a bigger boost depending on how compatible the 2 kaiju are. Compatibility is determined by their stats and innate stat growth. The number we see in the kaiju data screen is the number used in battle, but the number used in fusion takes into account the kaiju's stat growth as well. All kaiju main breeds have different rates of growth for each stat. Any kaiju with a subbreed will have an average of their stat growth to the main and subbreed. For example, fusing the low intelligence kaiju Red King with a high intelligence alien Baltan will result in Baltan Red King, which has an average intelligence growth. There are 5 stat growth grades. The community orders it from E to A, but I prefer 1 to 5 because there's math involved. To get the fusion stat numbers, you multiply the actual stat number with the stat growth, meaning a life stat of 1000 with a stat growth of 3 will read 3000 to the fusion calculator. The game does this for all 6 stats, and once calculation is finished, the results are ordered from highest to lowest, or vice versa if that's your thing. This calculation and stat sorting is done for both kaijus involved in the fusion. When fusing, Donna will have something to say about the compatibility of the combination. There are a total of 6 outcomes depending on how many stats match up to the other based on the ordering post-calculation. When no stat matches up, she'll say she's not sure about the combination and the fusion will result in a kaiju that's barely any stronger. But as the compatibility goes up with the best possible outcome having all 6 stats being in the same order after fusion calculation, the more the resulting kaiju will inherit per stat overall. Additionally, when you try to fuse, there are multiple possible results depending on which combinations of the 2 kaiju exist in the game, and what you get is random. A prediction table shows all possible outcomes in percentage ratios. Generally, you are more likely to get a breed matching the primary kaiju than the secondary, and even less so for any subbreeds they had. This matters because the lower the odds of a result is, the more they'll benefit from the compatibility and therefore be even stronger. You can also add a single fusion item. In particular, the various disc chips in the game will make minor changes in resulting kaiju. The most common are 500 bonus points to start with for any of these 6 stats on top of what's inherited from the fusion calculation, and adding preferred drills, which slightly improves the kaiju's performance when they go on one of the 12 different training drills on the ranch. And finally, the resulting kaiju may also start with more battle techniques if the parents knew more than just the basic moves. The more the parents had, the more you get at the start. Simple and short, you are now armed and ready to make the most of the fusion system. Beat the game, ultra kick the ultra ass of the Ultramen, go for maximum in all stats, shoot for the BEM stars. The main issue here is the involvement of the kaiju's stat growth. First off, it's a hidden value. You will certainly get a feel for what your monster's good at while you race them, but nowhere is it displayed in the UI. Which makes the second point worse. It's not mentioned that stat growth is involved in determining compatibility. We should consider ourselves fortunate because Kaiju Rancher's fusion is a bit simpler. That is, in comparison to the game it mostly copies from. Because if you didn't know, in Monster Rancher 2, the baby stats also factor in. The baby! Fusion in that game is like family planning but has no chance of being a benefit to your life. Also, the secondary kaiju slot contributes less to the strength of the resulting kaiju, meaning you're better off using the stronger of the 2 kaiju as the primary. The number of battle texts they know don't even factor in. Why? This essentially means any time you spend racing a kaiju for the second slot is inherently less valuable than the first, and what ends up happening is that players are less incentivized to send their secondary kaiju to errand trees. You might also go my way, which is to completely abandon the thought of racing the secondary kaiju. All that matters is that it's perfectly compatible with the primary. So how much can compatibility affect the result? Let's have a little test. Here's a kaiju I raced for 20 plus hours. It has a stat total of 57,000, well over what you need to finish the game. If I fuse it with a base Gandar which is not compatible for it at all, I receive a new Gandar with a starting total of 10,600. How much does it normally start with? 6,600. I earned 4,000 from the fusion. That can be raised from 2 hours of play. Now let's see what happens when 3 stats match up. I get an additional 4,000. My god, it's even worse than I thought. One might say that this skill stat is looking pretty good at 4,100. This happened to me once in my casual play on Monster Rancher 2 and I have no idea how I did it. But surely this complicated system is explained in the game. I commended Koei Tecmo for adding an extensive help section, so let's check. There are 3 articles in total, and in summary, all they say is strong fusion kaiju makes strong baby kaiju, and maybe inherits some battle moves. While both of these points are true, they are decidedly not helpful at all. I want you to understand, I am a Monster Rancher fan. I played the living shit out of the second game on the PS1. I managed to raise at least one of its 38 monster breeds, raise them to significant levels and have them fight each other in a 26-minute battle exhibition. But I will not deny that I hate how combining works. And to the insufferable, hardcore Monster Rancher players out there that want to gatekeep newcomers, saying it's easy once you get used to it and I just suck at the game, answer me this. How many of these factors did you figure out just by virtue of playing the game? And to reiterate from my review, I take issue with the fusion system not only for its wholly unexplained complexity, but because it's the only sensible use for your retired monster, which I feel is an easy problem to solve. And with that being said, how can we improve it? Well, we can go about that in 2 ways. 1. We do something involving the fusion system. Now it might sound like I'm contradicting myself here, but bear with me. I don't think the fusion mechanics need to change much. Just make the primary and secondary material evenly affect the result. Beyond that, the game itself just explains nothing about it. Imagine being told to solve a jigsaw puzzle in a pitch black room, that's what it's like. Just make a tutorial for it. Hell, make it fun to learn by having it be interactive. Let the player experience the satisfaction of a good combination by giving us a sample. And give us a few hints on how you got there. Light the room up a bit so we can put the pieces together. 2. We add options after retirement. And this is my preferred change. The 2 options for the last use of your retired kaiju, that's fusion and selling, does not feel rewarding enough, if at all. There needs to be a way that we can feel the fruits of our labor as we begin and continue to raise our next kaiju. I already mentioned how awesome it would be if your retired kaiju could become a coach to your new ones, like what they did in Monster Rancher Advance 2, but this time I also have a couple of new ideas. And guess what? Both involve battles, the most fun part of the game. What if you could release your kaiju into the wild and they could occasionally visit and challenge your kaiju to a sparring match for a stat boost? Throw that on top of the territory battles in this game and you'd be golden. Or what if you could submit them to the organization so they can appear as an opponent in future tournaments? Wouldn't these ideas add an element of surprise and constant excitement? I think they'd be great additions. So those are my proposed changes and they're not mutually exclusive. You can apply both and I believe the game would be better for it. And now to sum up. Gym leader Ed made a video saying legendcup.com is OP and you should use it. And he's right. But he's also wrong. Legendcup.com is a great resource, yes, but I disagree that you should use it. That site has stuff like monster stat growths, expedition maps, hidden breed unlock guides, fusion calculators, item effects, the list goes on and on. It is so detailed it feels like the wiki of the game. Naturally, it'll save you a lot of time if you use it. Now think about what I just said. It means the reason you'd want to visit the site is because you want to put less time in the game. Either that or the game by itself is no longer fun enough for you. Legendcup.com is indeed overpowered, but it's more than just the completeness of the guides. It's also about us, the tendency of humans to take the path of least resistance even if that path will result in less fun, less novelty, less memorable eureka moments. It's like painkillers, it solves the problem right now, but as you take more of it, you might develop a reliance on it. I myself have to resist the urge to visit the site. I had to make a concession. I want to save time planning out my exhibition kaiju and so I used the fusion calculator. Again, I have a video explaining how guides can ruin fun in games, so go watch that if you're so inclined. Maybe someday, when you get stuck behind a cryptic mechanic like Monster Rancher's combining system, you will visit legendcup.com as well. Complexity in the game is fine. Liking cryptic game mechanics and treating them like a super hard puzzle is also fine. Super Smash Bros. Melee had mechanics that were exploited by players to insane competitive levels. The difference is figuring out Melee was fun. To end, I leave you with this thought. Ultra Kaiju Monster Rancher released on October 20th in 2022. And due to how legacy skill and knowledge is beneficial to us, it took less than a month to figure out how fusion works. Monster Rancher 2, the gameplay model for this game, was released for the PlayStation 1 on February 25th, 1999. The first GameFAQs guide explaining the science behind combining was posted on March 7th, 2006. Thanks for listening to my rambling. Like, subscribe, show some support and all that. I hope you'll have a lovely day. See you next video.